Hello Year 5, Miss Ryan here. I hope you are well and welcome to your Tuesday lesson for guided reading. Now again, as I said before, we're going to be using the skill focus of explain to answer some questions to do with a non-fiction text. So let's get into using the skill today. Okay, welcome to your second lesson for guided reading, and again we're going to be explaining and discussing your understanding of text, maintaining a focus on the topic and using notes where necessary. Now today we're going to be having a look at using the skill of explain and how we might use it when answering questions. So we're going to do one together and then I'm going to give you one to do at the end by yourself. So let's have a look at the starter task. So what are necessities when in space? So what things do we need? So a necessity is what things can we not live without when in space? What I want you to do is I want you to draw that table, and then when a word comes up, I want you to say whether it's a necessity or not a necessity. So pause the video here and write that table down, and we'll go through some of the words together. Okay, welcome back. Hey, you've got that table written down, and now we're going to have a look at things that might be a necessity and might not be a necessity. So, is the toilet, so going to the toilet, so making sure we have a toilet available, a necessity or not a necessity? Now have a think about that now. Now going to the toilet or having a way of going to the toilet is a necessity. We all need to be able to relieve ourselves in one way or another. What about communication home? Now this might be a bit of a tricky one. So pause the video here and have a think about that. Where would you put it? Would it be a necessity or not a necessity? Okay, so a lot of you I feel like might be split on this, and I was too. Communication home is a really important thing for astronauts when you're in space, because obviously you need that contact home, but it's not a necessity. It's something that we can live without. So I've put it kind of slap bang in the middle. I've kind of left it there because I think it's important, but I'm not quite sure whether it's a necessity that they definitely do need. Food. Do you think it's a necessity or not a necessity? I hope we're all in agreement here that food is definitely a necessity in life, let alone in space. Now we've got an Xbox controller. Is that a necessity or not a necessity? An Xbox controller is not a necessity when you're in space. Yes, you might need some form of entertainment, but again, it is not a necessity. Flowers, is that a necessity or not a necessity? Flowers is not a necessity. We don't need flowers when we're in space. Football, do we need football? Is it a necessity or is it not a necessity? Football isn't exactly a necessity. Yes, you might need things to keep yourself entertained, but it isn't a necessity that you definitely need. Oxygen, do you think you might need oxygen when in space? It's definitely a necessity. And then what about water? So where do you think water might go? Exactly, water is a necessity. Now, things like obviously a football, flowers, and an Xbox controller, all things that we have within life. Some of us might have, some of us might not. And they're things that we can enjoy, but it's not a necessity within life. We don't need those to survive. Whereas having oxygen, food, water, a place to go to the toilet are things we need to survive, just in general, not just in space. And obviously communication home is a really important thing that we all need, especially at the moment as well. So that can really help with our well-being. And I think that might be a really important thing for obviously those astronauts in space to have that form of communication home. That's why I've kind of put that in the middle. Okay, so we're going to have a look at a new piece of text following on from the one from yesterday, which informs us about what astronauts need when they're in space. Again, if you identify any new words from the text, define them for me. Eating and drinking. Astronauts have a supply of specially prepared meals that they either heat up or add water to before eating. Some food and drinks are ready to consume straight away. So you have things like dried pear, we've got drinks, and we have a meal tray that straps onto legs. Then we've got weightlessness. Gravity is what makes us feel heavy, but astronauts on board the spacecraft and space stations cannot feel it working on them. They feel weightless. People and objects that are not held down may float about inside the craft. So obviously we can see someone there experiencing weightlessness. Beds on board. An astronaut's bed is a sleeping bag with body straps to keep people from floating around as they rest. The crew always keep the lights on, so eye shades are also needed. And the last one, hold on tight. This is a suction toilet. It uses flowing air to suck the waste into a container. Users have to strap themselves in. I'm guessing that is so they don't float away. So let's have a look at some tricky words. I'm going to say them and I want you to repeat after me. So we've got satellites, weightlessness, manipulator, astronauts, telescope. Now, what is the root word in the word weightless? Pause the video here for me. That's right, it is weight. We've got the suffix of less added. And can you see the spelling rule in the word cannot? The spelling rule in the word cannot is that cannot is a compound word. We've got two words joined together and it's made a new word. Okay, so we're now going to say it, shout it, whisper it and clap it. Obviously you've got the acting at home. And then before you use it in a sentence, I want you to define each of these words first and then write them in a sentence. And then tomorrow I'll show you the definitions and then my own sentences. So it's going to be my turn first and I want you to repeat after me. Satellites, weightlessness, telescope, manipulator, astronauts, satellites, weightlessness, telescope, manipulator, astronauts, satellites, weightlessness, telescope, manipulator, astronauts. Remember, for clapping, we're going to do the syllables in the words. Satellites, weightlessness, telescope, manipulator, astronauts. And then again, as I said before, I want you to define these words first and then use them in a sentence. And then you can check through them tomorrow when I show you my definitions and sentences. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the skill of explainer this week. What are the key skills for using the skill of explain? Pause the video here and have a think for me. Welcome back. Have you had a think about that question? And now these are the things, the steps of success for using the skill of explain. You need to make your point about the text and then you need to justify your answer with evidence and examples. So if I'm asking you to explain something from the text, you then need to say, I think it's this because in the text it says this. And I'll model that for you in a second. So let's have a look at this question. Explain why their beds had straps around them. So I need to read the text again and then I need to create my answer. Beds on board. An astronaut's bed is a sleeping bag with body straps to keep people from floating around as they rest. So that there, I don't need to carry on reading because I've got my point there. They need to have straps around them to stop them from floating as they rest. So this is my answer to the question. The beds had straps around them to stop the astronauts from floating around whilst they slept. I have got my point and I've explained my point using evidence from the text. Okay, so now it's your turn to answer this explain question. So I want you to explain how the astronauts prepare their food. So what you will need to start off by doing is reading the extract there and think about how they prepare, think about that word specifically, their food. So pause the video here, read through the text and then answer the question in full. Off you go, it's your turn. Okay, so now it's time to check through your answer. So this is my kind of summary of kind of what I'd expect you to put. So I've said they have to heat up some of their food or add water to it before they can eat it. So obviously some of their food they can eat straight away, but preparing their food specifically, some of it has to be heated up or added water to it. So before they eat their food, astronauts might have to prepare it by heating it up or adding water to it. Hopefully you've got that answer written down and let's carry on reading Cosmic. Okay, so I'm going to carry on reading Cosmic now and we're on a new chapter called Competitive Dadliness. There was a small, neat woman waiting on the steps of the plane. She had very white teeth and her hair was as smooth and as black as Playmobil. She offered Florida her hand and said, "Florida Digby, so pleased to meet you. How does it feel to have one of the 4 best dads in the world?" "Who are you?" said Florida. "I," said the woman, "am Dinah Drax." "Dr. Drax, the woman herself." When it was my turn to shake her hand, I got so excited I forgot to let go of it. She must have thought I was trying to get one of her fingers as a souvenir. I tried to think of something clever to say, but all I could manage was, "I love your phones." "A lot of people do, you know, thank goodness." "He's always going on about you," said Florida. "All complimentary, I hope." "I don't know, I never listened to him." "Love this plane." The plane was impressive, I have to say. It didn't have rows of seats like a normal plane. It had couches and easy chairs and little tables. There were 3 children down at the front and Galaxy Trader playing on a big video screen, and 3 dads at the back on the couches. Maybe Florida would like to go and play with the other children while I introduce you to the other dads. Okay. You're going to let go of my hand now, Mr. Digby. Sorry. I hadn't known until then that Dinah Drax was Chinese. Drax isn't her real name. Her real name means something like victorious over life's tribulations, but she changed it to Drax because victorious over life's tribulations didn't fit on the side of her phone. She took me to the back of the plane where the dads were sitting around. One of them was a skinny man with a big fat book about prime numbers. Now, I thought I knew all about prime numbers because of being gifted and talented, etc. But what I know about them comes to about a page. This book was at least 1,000 pages long, and he'd nearly finished it. So he was roughly 1,000 times cleverer than me. He looked up from the book and smiled. I'm Samson 2's father, he said. He pointed over to Samson 2, who was sitting next to Florida, also reading a big fat book. I'm Liam, I said, and before I could ask him why Samson 2 had such a weird name, he said, and my name is Samson 1. I'm from Waterloo, he said. I'm from Waterloo too, I said, but not the one with the neighbouring jungle, the one with the pie pass. He went back to reading his book. The next dad had a bald head and a nice blue suit. He gave me a card with his name and a phone number on, and pointed to a boy who was hogging the games console. That dear, lovable boy, he said, is my son, Hassan Iksandou, and I'm his father, Edhem, but you can call me Eddie. A man with very short hair and a big chest gave me a nod and said, Martinet, at your service. He took my hand and gripped it so tight that I wasn't sure whether he was greeting me or trying to initiate unarmed combat. I'm the father of Max. Max, greet the gentleman. At the far end of the plane, a boy with exactly the same haircut as Mr. Martinet jumped up and gave me exactly the same nod. Max is short for maximum, said his dad, which is what maximum is. He is the maximum Martinet. My name's Liam Digby, I said. Please call me Liam. He said, please call me Monsieur Martinet. Okay. I said, I'm Florida's father. That was the first time I'd ever said it out loud. I could feel everyone look at me. Any minute now I thought one of them was going to say, no, you're not. You're 12. So I said the most convincingly dad thing I could think of. And I said, anyone watch the game last night? They all answered at once. They need to buy a bigger defender, said Eddie Iksandou. The back four lack discipline, said, please call me Monsieur Martinet. The laws of probability say that you can't win the Champions League just on goals. Preventing opposition's goals is equally as important, said Samson 1. So easy. I hadn't even seen the match. I didn't even know there was a match. I just seem to have a natural talent for being a grown-up. Well, said Dr. Drax, smiling, I must fly. That's my little joke, by the way. I do fly the plane by myself. I've heard it's the best way to keep our destination top secret. I'm not much of a pilot, but I'm sure I'll pick it up as we go along. Everyone stared at her. Another one of my little jokes, she laughed. Caught you all again. In fact, Daddy gave me my first flying lesson when I was still small enough to sit in his knee. I'm really rather a good pilot. And off she went to the cockpit. I'm not sure if it's normal for pilots to be jokey like that, but if it is, it's not a good idea. I grabbed hold of the arms of the seat, closed my eyes and tried to think of the plane as another ride. As rides go, the flight to China was a bit lengthy, 12 hours I think, and once you got used to the idea that we were 30,000 feet in the air, it wasn't much of a thrill, but the view was pretty cosmic. Miles and miles of clouds, like a country made of squirty cream. I remember watching the plane shadow move across the white, like a little dog running over snow. Eddie Iksandou was sitting next to me. He said, it's a nice plane, yes? Best I've ever been on. My Hassan has an ambition to buy a plane like this, and he will do it. He is so good with money. Even when he was very small, at his first school, in my country, things are always changing because of wars and so on. One time the school uniform changed. First you wore a white shirt, now you must wear a blue shirt. Everyone goes to shops to find the blue shirts. There are none. Next day, Hassan comes to school and opens his bag. 100 blue shirts. He bought them all. Everyone bought a shirt from him, just a little bit more expensive than the shop, so he makes money. By the time he was 12, he had enough money to buy a house. He rents it out. Are you good with money, Mr. Digby? I realised I didn't actually have any money on me. I said, no, not like that, not at all. Hassan is a genius with money. Excuse me, said Samson 1. I couldn't help overhearing the conversation. Is your boy really a genius? More than a genius. A wizard with money. Oh, with money, said Samson 1, shaking his head with disappointment. Samson 2 is officially a genius. He did a project on irrigation and it was so good the government bought it. How much did they pay? Asked Eddie. $50,000? My Hassan would have got you twice as much. Monsieur Martinet chimed in. Money is a terrible distraction. My Max is too focused to care about money. What's he focused on, I asked, just to be polite. Success. Oh, right. Are you interested in success, Mr. Digby? I have written a best-selling book on the subject. I believe everyone can be a winner. It just takes a little bit of discipline. My World of Warcraft guild had once taken an entire territory. We were going to rename it, but then it was completely destroyed by a flight of dragons. And I said, interested, but not, bothered. What about Florida? What is her speciality? Is she a financial wizard? A natural leader? A genius? You are joking, I laughed. They all looked at me baffled. And after a while, Samson once said, why would that be funny? All she thinks about is shopping and celebrities. All she wants to be is famous. How strange, said Monsieur Martinet. Not really. All her friends are just as bad. I meant, how strange for a man to talk about his own daughter in that way. Oh, I said, well, It turns out that being a dad is a competitive sport. You're supposed to think your kid is the best kid. You're even supposed to try and convince other people that your kid is the best kid. You're supposed to be proud of your child. I sent my dad's copy of Talk to Your Teen out of my waterproof backpack, but I thought the other dads might be suspicious if they caught me using the instruction manual. So I took it to the loo. Reading on the loo is definitely dadly. It's all about listening, apparently. If you don't listen, your child becomes introverted and sulky. The more you listen, the more you'll understand. The more you understand, the more you'll find to be proud of. And if you're proud of them, they'll be proud of themselves. Later I tried to listen to Florida. She was down at the other end of the plane going on about Daytona or Paris or Brittany or someone. You see, her mother has chronic obesity. You know what that is. She was fat for a very long time. And that's why she has all these eating disorders, because she doesn't want to be like her mother, etc. It didn't seem to help. In fact, I thought it might be better if she did get a bit introverted and sulky. Then we landed, and then the doors opened. It was dark outside, but the plane soon filled up with the smell of toasted sand. Florida said, are we on a beach? I said, no, we're not on a beach. We are in a desert, said Samson too, and taking into account speed and direction, I would estimate that the desert in question is Gobi, sometimes known as Hanhai, or the Dry Sea. Florida said, I didn't know we had any deserts in England. England? Samson too laughed. We're not in England. We're in China. Florida turned to me. China! Oh my God, what have you done? China, how could we be in China, you idiot? I knew it. I just knew it. You do something like this. Well, you can just take me home right now. Home, I said. What do you want me to do? Hire a cab? Give you a piggyback? Do you know how far away we are? I know. We're in China, you idiot. China, you idiot. It was turning into a country in its own right. Everyone was staring at her now. Oh dear, Dr. Drax sighed. We girls are so complicated. Let's leave Dad to sort this out, shall we? Imagine Mr. Digby knows how to deal with his own daughter. I don't know what made her imagine that. Florida's actually kicking me now and bawling. You said we were going to a theme park. We are. This is it. It's in a desert. Not even a normal desert. A Chinese desert in China. You said it was down south. It is down south. I thought you meant London. But we were on a plane for hours. If you're on a plane for hours and hours, obviously you're going to be going further than London. I thought it was a slow plane. A slow plane? Don't be afraid of temper tantrums. Often a child will have something they need to tell you, but which they find difficult to say. Anger helps them say it. Think of the anger as an emotional FedEx. Something you turn to when the normal post just isn't fast enough. From Talk to Your Teen. Talk to Your Teen does not have a chapter specifically called When Your Daughter Kicks You in Public. In fact, when it came to Florida, World of Warcraft was more useful. You just had to think of her as a kind of monster. Remember that every monster has a soft zone. I'd already identified Florida's, so when I noticed that the others were all shuffling around the steps of the plane, arranged themselves in some kind of group, I pretended to ignore Florida and shouted like I was talking to Dr. Drax. It's okay, Dr. Drax. Florida doesn't want to be in the group photograph. As soon as she heard the word photograph, Florida sat up and started listening. I said, it's just a group photo for the newspapers or something. I'm not sure. Don't worry about it. You just keep on kicking me. Newspapers? Or magazines? I didn't really hear which. Or maybe it's for the telly. Honestly, kick away. Florida was doing one of her smiles in the front row of the photograph before I even had time to stand up. Dr. Drax said, wow, Mr. Digby, you suddenly seem to be a very effective parent. Smile for the camera, everyone. We're now in a new chapter called In China, You Idiot. I shall see you tomorrow for our next lesson. Stay safe.